This episode of GeoTalk is brought to you by Agru America, the plastics experts. Meet the design needs of your environmental and civil projects with the highest quality geosynthetic solutions. Learn more at agruamerica.com.
Welcome to Geosynthetic's GeoTalk podcast, where we discuss geosynthetics and affiliated issues in civil and geotechnical engineering. I'm Chris Kelsey, editor of Geosynthetica.net. Landfill engineering has advanced significantly over the past 35 years. Geosynthetic lining and capping systems have had a lot to do with the tremendous success landfill operators have had in controlling leachate, protecting groundwater, and improving the long-term economics of active landfills and post-closure care periods. In regards to responsible closure of sites, one of the fastest growing geosynthetic systems being used on landfills has been the ClosureTurf cover system. We checked in with Chris Eichelberger of Agru America about the long-term benefits of this system, how a decade of field data is lining up with lab data, other applications adopting this technology, and more. My guest today is Chris Eichelberger. He's Vice President of Technical Marketing for Agru America. Chris, I want to talk to you about engineered capping systems and specifically about ClosureTurf. This system has generated a lot of interest among engineers, and there's a pretty large body of work that's been executed with it. For listeners who do not know much about the system, can you give us a description?
Sure, Chris. I'd be happy to. Thank you for the call. ClosureTurf really, as you said, there is a large body of work now. There's a lot of installations, and this year we're now over 1,000 acres of installation of the product, throughout the United States and Canada. The system itself is absolutely a final cover. It's a final closure solution, and it's equivalent and basically superior to prescriptive options that we've typically had from Subtitle D. The system incorporates an Agru structured geomembrane. So, those products could be either our microspike material, the super grip net, or the microdrain material even, overlain by an engineered synthetic turf product. So that engineered synthetic turf is installed directly over the geomembrane, and then it's completed with the installation of a specified infill product, and that could range from an ASTM C33 sand material or to a more binded solution of, say, armor fill or even hydro binder. And those products are selected based upon the anticipated stormwater velocities of the closure project. That's really the description of the system, but what the system offers to our market that's very unique, and it's the only system that really offers this to us, is just a predictable benchmark of performance. The performance of a lot of the closure systems that we're used to from the early Subtitle D days, they are based upon the performance of those systems are based upon that vegetative layer. And a vegetative layer, is basically unknown over time. So we go through droughts and floods and hurricanes, and ultimately the weather patterns are going to dictate the performance of that vegetative layer. So with ClosureTurf, wherever you install it around the country, in whatever conditions, it's going to perform the same in those areas.
Yeah.
So that's pretty unique.
It is. Agru certainly has a pretty good history of innovation, particularly in the liner market. How did Agru get involved with ClosureTurf?
Sure. It goes back about 10 years now, but we've had the benefit of working with the inventors of the ClosureTurf system on conventional closure projects for years prior to the actual creation of ClosureTurf. So, specifically in the Southeast, and those experiences are what drove the creation of ClosureTurf by the engineers at Watershed Geo. Yeah. We all experienced, some of these same known deficiencies of the prescriptive closure methods that came along with Subtitle D. So as Watershed Geo developed the ClosureTurf system, I personally believe they found value in the long-standing business relationship that they had with Agru, but also because of our national and our international reputation of quality and our footprint. But I think also really in the unique physical properties and the consistency of our structured geomembrane process. So what I mean by that is that flat cast process that really provides extreme consistency, in the asperity height in the shape of the asperities, but also in the sheet thickness. And then, of course, that integrated drainage layer if you're using a super grip net or a microdrain product. So, I mean, for me, the success of ClosureTurf and really HydroTurf as well has been a lot of fun. And, we're just very happy to support Watershed and those products, throughout the industry.
Yeah, sure. Landfills is a very big market for this. You and I have actually written about exposed capping systems for a couple conference papers. From the strict engineering requirements and waste management, what are the benefits that have captured the greatest interest?
Sure, and I think that's one of the big differentiations with this technology in terms of exposed caps or more of a hybrid option. So we consider ClosureTurf as more of a hybrid option, and what I mean by that is ClosureTurf provides the environmental closure layer, or as Subtitle D calls it, the infiltration layer, with that polyethylene geomembrane. But then the second layer of the system also satisfies the Subtitle D requirement of that erosion layer. And that erosion layer, it protects against wind erosion, water erosion, but it also protects the geomembrane from that constant UV exposure. So that's the big difference that I think keeps this from being considered as an exposed system. Yeah. But the system itself, it provides all the benefits and advantages of having that soil cover layer in terms of UV protection, but it removes all of those disadvantages. Yeah. So that's important. The layers are important from a regulatory perspective, but also so you can traffic on top of the actual closure. As you mentioned, we've written some papers together. I think exposed geomembrane covers certainly have a place in the industry, and they're an excellent tool for temporary leachate and landfill gas control.
How does ClosureTurf address common capping system concerns with stabilities on slopes in windy environments, anchoring? What can we expect on the durability or maintenance and service life size?
Sure. Well, it stands up really, really well to those factors you mentioned, and that's because the innovation was driven by those deficiencies. So it was created specifically to address those known deficiencies that you just mentioned. So, in terms of anchoring, there is nothing different or special about the anchoring of ClosureTurf. If you have a 20-acre closure, you would simply just have one perimeter anchor trench around your 20-acre closure, or it would tie into an existing closure. But there is no additional anchoring or ballast whatsoever of the system. Slope stability is probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest benefit. Basically, it's eliminated when you use ClosureTurf. So we can install the system on a 2-to-1 slope, and an engineer can still have a factor of safety of around 1.9. Slope stability is key, especially in seismic zones. The system is really the only answer and the true answer for a seismic zone where most other options just won't even meet the requirements. I think service life, you talked about durability and service life, that's probably where most of the efforts and the R&D is focused right now, just because it's obviously it's out there in the future, and it's one of the biggest questions. Once we all became comfortable and the industry became comfortable with wind uplift and stormwater controls, I think longevity is still probably the biggest question that we answer. So with over 10 years of actual field data that we have from UV testing that Watershed has done out in Phoenix, Arizona, so we look at the exposed turf fibers. That is the only component of the ClosureTurf system that is actually exposed to the UV. So the half-life of those engineered turf fibers is responsibly and very conservatively reported to be in excess of 100 years. With 10 years of actual data, that allows us to go out, one log to that 100-year number. So, and this information all comes from a third-party assessment of the material that we can share. And then actually, 2 or 3 months ago, SWANA published a recent paper on alternative closures, and they provided an even greater longevity for the turf option.
That's fascinating. Earlier, you had mentioned, you can use the system with different types of Agru membrane. How do you go about the process of selecting which you're going to use, whether it's a microspike or, one of the other options? Sure,
and that it's a fairly easy decision to make. It's based on slope stability. Okay. So if we're looking at a project that's on, say a 3.5 to 1 or greater or steeper slope, so 3 to 1, 2 to 1, that's where we're going to look more at the super grip net or the microdrain option, just so we have that integrated drainage layer and we have the interface friction characteristics that we're looking for. But if we're on a 4 to 1 slope or even flatter, down to a 1% or 2% grade like we see in the CCR industry, that's where we can now substitute with our 40 mil microspike product. So basically we realized that Super Grip Net or microdrain could be overkill in a more flat application. So microspike was the next best option, I'd say technically and economically.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the CCR management as well. I was curious how wide the application range is now for using ClosureTurf.
We have three main areas. MSW solid waste is still the majority applications for ClosureTurf. So with over 1,000 acres, I'd say 75% have been installed for MSW sites. That's really what drove the innovation of the product. But now I'd say with the CCR rule and also with industrial closure projects, we see more and more of those on an annual basis. And what we've noticed specifically with the CCR rule and the industrial projects, these facilities were typically permitted decades ago without closure requirements. Therefore, at the time of permitting, there was no consideration for on-site borrow areas for soil to end up closing those areas. And, if we think about, let's just say a 24-inch soil cover layer, that's about 11.5 million pounds of soil per acre. So if you're looking at a 100-acre closure that does not have adequate soil supply, I'm not sure it makes sense to just locate borrow areas, continue to strip them, continue to haul and place all this soil when we no longer need to.
In terms of where this is being used, I mean, this is basically being used everywhere, but have we seen it installed in every state at this point? We did get, it's 2 or 3 years ago, I think, we got our first ClosureTurf cap done on a landfill, and that site has generated a lot of interest.
Sure. I'd say, the easy answer is that we've been able to basically follow the market wherever the needs are. You mentioned Minnesota. Minnesota does have strict requirements, and rightfully so. So, our challenge was to go up and demonstrate equivalency or superiority in terms of Subtitle D. And Subtitle D and even the CCR rule, they specifically recognize that alternates are available or would become available throughout time. So the rule allows for use of better technology when it comes along. And I'd say, right now we're right at about 25 states in terms of approval or pending approval or installations. And there's more states on the way. And there's also, many of the states, the majority of states that have not approved it or do not have a project yet, they just simply have not received their first permit request to use ClosureTurf yet.
So it's a situation where we have really widespread use, but there's still great potential and growth behind this now.
Yeah, I would think so. And what's exciting is now we have multiple projects from the same owner or from the same engineer or from the same state. So we're seeing that repeat in action.
This episode of GeoTalk is brought to you by Agru America, the plastics experts. Did you know that Agru is now producing the largest diameter HDPE pipe in North America? Agru's latest facility in Charleston, South Carolina was built right on the harbor to support the extrusion and transportation of pipes with an outer diameter of up to 98 inches and lengths of almost 2,000 square feet. Agru large diameter pipe uses the highest quality polyethylene resins, which are lighter and more flexible than steel and provide unparalleled resistance to chemicals, corrosion, and UV radiation. Meet the supersized design needs of your next piping project with Agru's large diameter pipe. Learn more at agruamerica.com.
Are you extending this system internationally?
Yes. There's installations in Canada right now. And of course, there's inquiries from virtually everywhere. But as you know, the market here is quite busy. There's a lot of opportunity here in North America. But, with our worldwide footprint and Watershed Geo's partners, they also have a global footprint. So any project is certainly an option.
Fantastic. To kind of, I don't want to leave out some of Agru's other achievements. I mean, you guys have been really busy with R&D. There's been a lot of new products. There's been a lot of product line extensions and enhancements going on. What's next? What else can we look for from Agru?
Sure. I think, what's next, honestly, is it's a little bit of a break from the conversation, but it's large diameter pipe. And it's not just next. It's actually right now our facility in Charleston is producing large diameter pipe. We completed the factory, I'd say just about 2 or 3 months ago. But what we did was we constructed a brand new facility in Charleston, South Carolina, that's going to produce very large diameter polyethylene pipe. And these are diameters that have historically not been produced in North America at all. So we have the ability to produce the materials in accordance with ASTM, but also with ISO standards. And then what's really interesting and I think exciting is to cost effectively produce large diameter pipes. And when I say large diameter, that sizing goes the whole way up to 98 inches for the outside diameter.
Yeah.
And to cost effectively produce these, we designed the facility right on the Cooper River in Charleston. And what that does is it allows us to extrude the pipe directly into the water.
Yeah.
So the water extrusion process not only permits the manufacturing of very long pipes, but it also allows us to leverage the ocean for the transportation of the orders. So it's pretty exciting. I think we're going to see the pipe used in sewage applications, certainly in the mining industry, but also for cooling water, for power plants, for desalination facilities, large irrigation projects. So really opens up the door to a new market.
No, that's fantastic. I've seen photographs of that manufacturing site, and it's pretty fascinating that you can take the pipe directly out. Basically, it becomes a port in a way. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be able to ship in lengths of pipe up to about 2,000 feet per length. So what that does for the end user is rather than receive 50-foot lengths of pipe in a container that you then have to butt weld in the field and do all those welding joints, now a customer will receive a 2,000-foot piece.
That's cool. What else is Agru providing there? I know you guys have a larger portfolio than the large diameter pipe.
Sure. We actually offer injection molded HDPE pipe fittings, and those are not injection molded fittings are, of course, not of the size of our large diameter pipe, but our injection molded fittings more service the standard HDPE piping industry for landfill gas and for water supply projects.
That brings me back to ClosureTurf. If you're using these HDPE pipe fittings on these sites with gas pipe, is ClosureTurf a system that can be utilized with landfill to gas operations?
Absolutely. Yes. The ClosureTurf system, once again, it's specifically designed for landfills. So the incorporation of a landfill gas collection system into ClosureTurf is seamless. There's really two options. There's a passive option for landfill gas collection with the system. And then there's also an active collection system that incorporates, some of our geocomposite underneath of the system just to help bring the landfill gas to the actual gas wells.
I think what you guys are doing with ClosureTurf and the waste management market, what you're doing in coal ash, this new large diameter pipe, everything going on, it's great work. I'm looking forward to seeing more project notes, and I really appreciate you sharing your time today.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate everything that you do and Geosynthetic as well. So the contribution to the industry is great, and I hope to have some case histories for you guys coming up in the next 12 months.
We want to thank Agru America for sponsoring this episode of GeoTalk. For more information on ClosureTurf, Agru's other geosynthetic expertise, and the company's new large diameter pipe facility, visit agruamerica.com. We look forward to bringing you another episode of GeoTalk next week. Thanks for listening.